Welcome to my API specifications conference session. My name is Chris Wood. I'm a freelance API consultant and occasional dilettante. Today, I'm going to be talking about Spectral. So, what is Spectral, I hear you ask? Well, Spectral is an API specification linter that has been released by Stoplight. It's an open source tool. You can download it onto your laptop or computer or whatever, and use it to help you improve the quality of your API specifications. Make sure they're syntactically correct. Make sure that they use the right format. Essentially, it's there as an aid to help you do better in how you create API specifications. So it covers Open API, but also covers Swagger, Async API, and JSON schema. So it's good for a variety of different formats. It's a command line tool. You can use it as a package inside a JavaScript library, but I think it's best used as a command line tool. You do some work on your API specification. You want to make sure that it's syntactically correct. So use this linting tool. That can extend out into stuff like continuous integration, where you're working on API specifications, creating open API documents, for example, and you want to ensure the quality of those across your team. Make sure your team members are creating them correctly. They're not submitting or checking in dud API specifications, that they're actually doing a good job of creating them. So that's what it's there for, but it's a bit wider than that in my view. What it's really good for is something that I think is really, really important if you're serious about doing API first design. And that's design time governance, right? So if you're doing API first design, the thing you're going to come out of the design process with, however you're doing that, it might be some agile process you're running, it doesn't really matter. But at some point, you're going to write an API specification document. You're going to take that and you're going to use that to then actually build the software that implements that API. But you want it to be correct up front. We've already established that. You want the right level of quality. You want to make sure that this thing can actually be used to build some software. But it's a bit deeper than that, because that activity doesn't happen in isolation. Organizations tend to create standards for their APIs. You know, the starting point for that standard might be REST, right? And then from that, it might say, oh, you have to include these attributes in the info section inside your Open API specification, or you have to format your URIs in a particular way so that when you express a path inside the Open API specification, it has to conform to a certain format. And what Spectral gives you is the ability to add layers of governance as you're actually designing. So you can say, okay, I've read the standards, I've created this Open API specification document. However I might have done that, you know, you might have written it by hand from scratch, if you're nuts, or you might have some way of assembling it using a design tool. You know, however you've done it, you know, if you really do want to write it from scratch in Notepad or whatever, then knock yourself out. But at some point, you've got to actually apply it, make sure standards are applied correctly. So this tool, Spectral, can actually help you do that. You can write rule sets to use from in Spectral that actually reflect your standards. So when you come out of the design process, essentially you can make sure that your Open API specification or whatever it is actually adheres to the standards that you're setting within the organization. You can do that programmatically by using this command line tool. So for me, that's a really great thing, because you take away a lot of the headaches, a lot of the slow review process, the possibility for error later down the line when you've actually started implementing software. You know, there's a lot of time saving, there's a lot of quality improvement, there's a lot of standardization that you can get from using this tool. And obviously, if you're an API provider, having well-constructed, consistent, and good quality API specifications that you're going to give to your developer community is vitally important. So, so for me, design time governance is a really, really critical thing. And it's important for organizations to take that seriously. And Spectral can't solve that entirely for you, but it can really, really help you do it right. So this is called Hands-On with Spectral, this session, obviously. So let's get hands-on. You've heard enough of me waffling on. Let's get to grips with the tool, understand how it works. I've done this session before. That session took 50 minutes. I've cut it down drastically just to the bare bones so that we fit into a 20-minute of intense discovery in Spectral. So I'm going to flip over to Visual Studio Code. Now, as you can see, I've already got an Open API specification open. It's the Pet Store API specification that we all know and love. I'm using this as the basis for my demo. Okay, so once you've installed Spectral, which you can install globally, you're using a Node.js instance on your box, on your laptop, desktop, whatever, it can be installed anywhere. I won't demonstrate that now, waste a bit of time. Once you've got it, it's as simple as running the command Spectral lint. You're telling it Spectral to go and do a linting operation, and then point at the specification. In our case, we've got petstore.yaml stored on the file system. It can be addressed remotely. Spectral's got the capability to go and do a fetch on document stored on the internet or wherever. Okay, so I'm going to hit go. I'm going to get a bunch of feedback. Okay, so Spectral's using the built-in rules it's got for Open API. You can see that Open API has been detected. So Spectral's actually checking to see what type of document it is. And then the good folks at Stoplight have come up with a bunch of standard rules that they think are really, really important. And you get on screen a digest of what the current issues with this document are. So going from left to right, it's a column-based layout. You can, I think there's a few other formats. I think there's JSON format you can use, but that's beside the point for the minute. It tells you where it's found an error, what kind of, or an issue, let's call it an issue because errors are specific errors, and this is a warning. What the classification is, in this case, it's a warning. It gives you a short code, so a short name for the issue. This one, first one's called Open API tags, and then a more long-winded human-orientated version that tells you what the issue is. So it's in Stoplight's view, every Open API specification should have a tags array which defines all the tags at the top of the document and then gives you a description for those tags at the top of the document. And then those are referenced in a viewer like Swag UI or pull down those descriptions. So where tags are shown, you can see the description as well. So it's nice for developers to have that. It adds extra documentation. So all good stuff in terms of a full-featured, well-constructed Open API document. So as you can see, this Pet Store API, we've got a bunch of warnings based on the built-in rules that the good folks at Stoplight came up with. Okay, so that's great. That's a start. We can link this document. That's all great. However, going back to this idea of design time governance and the fact that we could reflect our standards in our organization inside the Spectral rule sets that we're going to create, we don't want to just do nothing. We want to make sure that we've got what we need in order to apply the rules that are right for the organization. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a rule set. Now, if you're from the UK, in the style of Blue Peter. I prepared this earlier. So just copying a command to save a bit of time. So I've created a rule set. A rule set is a YAML file. It's basically instructing Spectral to do certain things. One, to do things like turn rules on and off. Two, which we'll come on to in a minute, you can implement your own rule sets. Remember, I said design time governance is about grabbing your, getting a reflection of your standards that you can apply at design time to make sure that your standards are adhered to and improve the quality of your design, shorten your design process, all good stuff. Okay, so in order to do this seriously, you need to have rule sets in place. So this first rule set you can see on screen is, I've called it the empty rule set. Okay, all it's doing is taking the Spectral Open API specification rule set and extending it, and nothing else. So at the command line, I can go and run the linting command again, but reference that rule set, which I've stored in my rule sets directory, hit go. Okay, I'm getting the same output, right? I'm getting all those warnings about missing tags and bits and pieces of the info object missing. So I get all that stuff all over again. Okay, but I've made a start. I'm now starting to extend the Open API specification rule set from Spectral into my own rule set. Okay, but I want to do more than that. Okay, first things first, all these warnings that I'm getting, you know, me as the API architect in the organization, I'm thinking, yeah, well, that's, you know, I don't care about all that stuff. You know, I expect developers inside, or API designers in the organization, to just go and fill them with guff to get their work done. I can't assure the quality of them at the moment, so I don't actually want to turn all those, have all those things showing up as warnings. I'd just like to turn them off, please. And the Spectral rule set can help you there, simply because you can turn rules off that are built into the core Open API rule set. So in my basic rule set, what I've got here is I've now extended my empty rule set, the place where I actually set down the fact that I'm going to extend from Open API specification Stoplight rule set, and I've added some rules. And what I've done is turned all these warnings that are firing off, because I'm not interested in them. As I said, I can't assure the quality. I don't know that they're going to be correct when they're actually implemented, so I'm just going to turn them off. It's a bit lazy, but for the purposes of a demo, it's good enough to make the point that you can turn rules on and off. Okay, so in my YAML document, I've got my extends. I'm extending from the previous file I created. This means we can build our rule sets iteratively. And then I'm putting my rules object in and upfront defining the things I want to turn off. So if I go back into the terminal and smash in that command that I just copied, it runs and we have no warnings. So I've accomplished something already. I've turned off rules that I'm not interested in. They're not in my standards. I don't care about them, so they're being switched off. Okay, so great. Simple functionality, easy to do. However, if we really want to do something sophisticated, then we need to work a bit harder than that. You know, there may be things in this pet store API that that I still don't reflect my corporate standards, and therefore I very much need to add a rule set that enforces those standards more strongly. So I've created another rule set, and this one's called custom rule set, interestingly enough. Again, we're extending, we're layering on top, we're doing this iteratively. So I've extended from the basic rule set that I just created. And in here, I've created a custom rule set. This is a piece of governance I want to enforce. And this particular piece of governance is around security. So for anything that's an unsafe endpoint that can cause the state of a particular resource on the server to be changed because it's going to be created or overwritten, I want to, or even deleted, I want to make sure that security is in place. So a consumer calling an API that's been implemented against this spec can't just go and make merry hell. So just to discuss the anatomy of this particular rule, I've given it a name, and that name will appear in the column that we saw earlier as the short code. I've given it a message. So my message is security must be enforced for unsafe endpoints. I've defined the severity. The severity of this is an error. I absolutely want this to fail linting if it's found. And then I've expressed what I want this to check on. Now, this given keyword inside the rule set is really important because it tells the rule to go and look at a particular place in the Open API the API specification document, whatever it is. And this is expressed using JSON path, so it's really flexible. It allows you to do some relatively sophisticated queries in order to go and look at a particular part of the Open API specification. And here, basically what I'm saying is for any path, so paths / whatever, if it has the property post, put, patch, or delete, so our unsafe HTTP methods, then, and here's the then keyword, I want to check this field security and make sure it exists. Now, this function keyword here points to a function that's built into Spectral. So, pardon me, Spectral has a bunch of built-in rules that can help you. A bunch of built-in functions that can help you write these rules. So this one, truthy, which is just an example, this says this object, this field must exist. So essentially, if that's not found in the place that given points to, then the linter needs to throw an error. So very simple stuff, nice, simple rules laid out well with keywords that point to the important parts of the rule itself, adjacent path mechanism in order to point to specific parts, and then built-in functions to support that. So a really useful feature in order to go and take our standards, go and take our expectations from the organization, and then enforce them when we're asking API designers to actually come up with quality API specifications that are correct and reflect the corporate or organizational standards. Okay, so I've got this custom rule set with a new rule set up that's governing security. So I can go and grab the next command and run it. Actually, let's just hold fire and clear. So clear our terminal, so we've got lots of space. Hit go. Okay, so this time we've got an error, and I'll prove it's an error because I got a 1 back as a return code at command line. So exactly the same format. It's a custom rule set, but exactly the same format as the built-in rule sets. It's telling me where it found it. Here it's telling me that this is an error. It's giving me the short name for it, which is what I just showed you back here in the custom rule set. There's the short name that proves that this one was triggered. My longer, wordier piece of information that's telling me as a human being what I need to know about this rule that's been fired and not passed. And then it tells me where it found it in the Open API specification document. So really, really good for doing our standards enforcement, for making sure that there's quality, that there's security, and there's consistency in our Open API specifications. Okay, so I need to fix this thing as a developer, you know, a designer designing this API specification. I know where it is, so I'll go back into my pet store API specification document and go and add security. Now I've already popped this in already. So I've added a security object that's going to pass that rule now. However, I'm a bit lazy, so I've basically spoofed this so that there's an empty object, which is something I shouldn't be doing. Okay, so the point in doing this is to talk about the next feature, and this is the final feature I'm going to talk about, which is custom functions. So you have the ability to create custom rule sets. You can use the built-in functions to help you, but if there's some piece of governance that you can't achieve, then you can write some JavaScript in order to support you in what you want to do. So if I go to my custom function, okay, the anatomy of this is exactly the same. I'm extending from the custom rule set. So again, I'm layering up my rules so that if I want to create a suite of rules that a developer or a designer can take and use when they're doing design, they can do. You know, you can create a bank of rules for the organization that they can then take and use in their projects. In this case, I'm just building iteratively on top of one another as I do the demo. So the anatomy is the same. I've created this rule, which is security object must not be a hacked-in empty object. I've created a message, but this time I'm going to let my custom function return the error. It's going to be an error again. We've got the JSON path again in the given keyword, but this time I'm looking at the security object specifically. And then what am I doing? I'm running this custom function called empty security. How do I know it's a custom function? Because up here in the functions keyword, I've referenced a function that I've created in JavaScript that's on the file system. Now, if I just go and do ls on functions, which is directory in my rule set, directory, we'll see that there's a matching JavaScript file called empty security. So just to look at the anatomy of this thing, okay, it's a very, very simple function defined at the top level of the package. All I'm doing is passing in the result of the JSON path assertion, JSON path query. It says that if that object has no keys, i.e. it's empty, then we're going to return a message, security requirement objects with no property defines no security, clearly saying that that's wrong. Okay. So if I go back to pet store, I've already saved my empty security object because I'm lazy. And let's go back to the command line and run it. And there we are, right? Based on a custom function, a thing we couldn't accomplish with the built-in functions, we're checking that API developers, designers aren't being lazy, just creating empty security objects where they shouldn't be. Okay, so that's the end of the hands-on piece. Essentially, Spectral's allowed me to go from nothing to something very, very quickly. I've been able to rapidly create rule sets that help me enforce governance at design time. It's a really, really powerful tool for helping you improve the consistency, quality, and the standardization of your API specifications. So that's it. Thanks very much for watching the session.